level. Okay, now I'm going to go back to good news again. We do have some signs of change. Engineering is attracting a lot more young people in Maine. Especially at UMaine, and we're finding a lot more women going into engineering. So a group up there, Engineers Without Borders, that is really attracting a lot of people to use engineering to, to solve real problems, to save the world, to make a difference in the world. And engineering has increased at the fastest rate of any of the majors up there. Here, closer to home at UMA, we find 26 kids. Well, maybe Greg knows whether this is the exact number or not, but I heard this a couple weeks ago, involved in computer science IT this year. And this ranks very high within the UMaine system. In fact, it may be second, the second highest number of computer science IT students. And UMA is on the verge of starting a data visualization center, which will attract even more students to this area. A third sign for hope, Educate Maine has started an initiative. It's a nonprofit group, and it involves about 50 organizations, every business, industry, higher ed, K-12, nonprofits, and they're going to try to double the number of CSIT grads from 100 to 200 within a 4-year period. So that's a pretty ambitious goal, but there's a lot of funding committed to this at this point. And the main problem is visibility. How do you attract kids into these careers? If you remember, they know mostly doctor and scientists. So now we're talking computer science and IT. They might know programmer, but programming's a lot more than you think. There are some signs of change at the policy level here in Maine as well. We have two groups. The STEM Collaborative, which I think that involves, again, about 30 organizations throughout the state. We have summits once every other year and try to increase awareness among everybody, the whole business, nonprofit, educational, labor spectrum about what we need to do. And the Governor's STEM Council started a year ago, and that's about 12 of us, I believe, who are trying to develop a clear roadmap. What can we all do together? Because it's not enough to just have all these isolated projects. We want to move together. We want to be aligned. We want to know about each other's work. So within this whole state of STEM education in Maine, my organization, the Maine Math and Science Alliance, has been around for about 20 years, and we've been working primarily with teachers to try to make sure that teachers who maybe don't have much of a background in science or math, and certainly not in engineering, you don't find many people going into, say, middle school teaching who have a background in engineering. So how do we work with teachers now to increase their understanding of where these fields are going and how they're changing? The fields are rapidly changing, and so everybody needs to, even if you've been a science major in college and you're teaching, you need to figure out what's going on now, what's happening up at JAX, what's happening with computational biology, with all of the kind of hybrids of different professions. We're also working with kids, and we're working now on a new initiative called the Reach Center, which is outside of school. Kids spend most of their waking hours outside of school, and we feel like that's kind of an underutilized block of time. And so the Reach Center is working to try to connect students to all the opportunities, resources, programs, events that are happening in Maine. We're working with 10 to 18-year-olds, and our mission is to try to, we're working with any kid who, well, we talk about showing promise. Now, most kids show promise. In order to show promise, it's really about, are you interested in this? Or can you be interested if we do a couple things with you? Can we ignite that spark for you? And if that happens for you, if you're interested, then you're in. We want to keep you in this pipeline. We're working with a lot of partners on this project, and I'm going to move ahead and tell you a little bit about what we've done in the year since we've started this 10-year project. And this project is funded by an anonymous Maine donor who had 2 kids herself who are in STEM fields now. One's in graduate school and one's in finishing up college. And she realized that, that her kids had unusual opportunities for kids in Maine, and that a lot of their friends didn't get those same opportunities. So she said to us, how can we provide more of those opportunities to all Mainers? And that's what we're doing. So what we've started with is, well, stories, people telling their stories. There's a lot of them in this room and out there. There's a lot of Mainers who have stories about how they developed a passion for STEM. And we've tried to put together some of these on our website, and we'll provide you more information about that. But there's a book that, that I'd recommend if you get a chance to take a look. It's called Falling for Science. And this is by Sherry Turkle, who's a scientist at MIT. She collected stories of successful people who, and asked them, what did you do as a kid that got you interested in science? And of course, people talked about playing with Legos. Some of them talked about playing with stuffed animals. They braided their tails and then made the braids, each braid broke that down into 3 more, and each one of those broke down into 3 more. And that's a process called recursion in math. And so there was one scientist who talked about how she got fascinated with patterns by playing with these stuffed animals. Anyhow, we need to start by sharing the stories of how people got involved. There are a lot of these stories around, as I said. And the second thing is we need to let people know about Maine's resources. Some of these resources are hidden. People, events, places. So the stories, here's the website where you can find video case studies of, they are only 2 minutes each or so, maybe a little bit less. But these are a range of kids and adults, a kid who is in a robotics club and also raises chickens. We have a doctor, we have teachers, we have people, the guy who's involved in sustainability science at USM. So it's kind of people who we hope that the kids themselves might recognize and maybe see themselves in these stories. The other thing we're doing is this resource bank, which will be ready in a couple months. We have collected about 100 different resources, events, and places where people can find out about STEM. And it's just been fascinating for me to go to some of these places. Like, I don't know if you know about the Acadia Night Sky Festival, which is one of the most famous in the country. And that happens, 4th time it's happened annually in Acadia, 4 or 5 days. And it's an easy way to get to know more about the night sky, but also about hiking in the dark and how you use stars for navigation. And what is bioluminescence? There are creatures that glow in the dark, in the water, and what's that all about? So this resource bank will categorize the resources you can find, and we'll have reviews, the inside scoop. It's sort of like Netflix or Angie's List, where there'll be reviews. I went to this is what I liked about it. So you can look up by your interests, and ultimately what we'll have is, if you like this, then you might also try something else. This is a mock-up of what it will look like. Right now, if you go to our website, you'll also find some what we're calling meta resources, or big data banks, like 700 opportunities to do science at home with your kids. And so these are things where you can collect data on roadkill in your neighborhood, or you can collect data on, roadkill is an important indicator actually of what kinds of species have what populations and how those populations are changing. Also on bird migration, or on classifying universes or galaxies. So there's all kinds of what's called citizen science projects that you can find on this database. The other thing we're working on is in 2 areas in Maine. We're putting together, we're calling Maine STEM guides. And these are people guides, and people to help kids connect to these resources, because they might stumble on resources by themselves using our data bank or other data banks. But if there's somebody there who can help them, a big brother, big sister type person, somebody who knows something about STEM and is passionate about STEM herself or himself, that's going to make a big difference. we think of some of the people in this room might be good STEM guides. That a lot of people here have businesses that involve science or engineering, I think especially engineering, manufacturing. And so, you know, you might be in a great position to be guides. How would this work? What can you do? Well, a few things. First, if you know how to make or build things, find a kid and do it with a kid, because most of our kids don't have enough experiences with that. And it really is the case that the more that you build, the more likely you are to get interested in how things work. The more you fix things, the more you're interested in how things work. That's a big question in all STEM fields. How do things connect? So do projects with kids. Encourage persistence. Instead of saying, oh, I was never good at this either, say, you know, it's a fascinating problem you're working on, and you know, there's a lot of times you're not going to get there, but keep trying. Ultimately, you'll get there. Persistence is really critical to success in STEM. You can share your own stories about your career pathway with kids. That's very, very important. If they know you as a neighbor, a friend of their parents, and you tell them your story, they're going to be able to maybe see, well, that person isn't like that brilliant. I could do it too if she can do it, or if he can do it. He's kind of like me. So just to conclude here, there are many possible futures in STEM. We don't even know what most of them are. Who would have thought about data analysts, data visualizers, computational biology experts, even 10 years ago? There are many, people have to be prepared to innovate and be able to solve what is being called wicked problems. And the future of a lot of what's happening here in Maine and beyond depends on having strength in STEM. I think Arne Duncan says it best. He says, we must educate ourselves to a better economy. That's the only way we're going to get there. I think this may be a Sputnik moment, one where we say, yeah, we got to change it. The image in the lower half of this is of the Curiosity rover. And if you've been following that, it's quite fascinating what we can do in space with robotics. We need to have kids who are interested and able to do that kind of work. And I'm counting on all of you to help with that. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Jan, very much.
It is Strictly Sports.